wonderful Zoom meeting. Thanks for not having to get out in the rain today. I need to say that this meeting is being held in conjunction with the Governor's Executive Order 34 that allows for public meetings to be held virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our meeting has been advertised and streamed live on YouTube. It's being recorded and will be posted on the Development District's website immediately following this meeting. At this time, I'd like to call on David Jackson, if you're there, David, for the presentation.
Great. Therefore, I'm so thankful for this day, for all the many blessings bestowed on each of us. So thankful for this country that we live in. We ask that you look over us, get us through these times that we're struggling through right now. We're so thankful for the leaders of the different parts of our region, for the work they put in to make their communities a better place to live and to work. Dear Father, we're so thankful for the Development District and what they do to assist us in helping our citizens. Continue to bless them and give them the strength to help us in making our communities a better place. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask everyone that you look over everyone, keep us all safe and healthy during this pandemic. And hope that this will soon be over, that we can return as normal as possible. Dear Father, we ask you now to go with us through this meeting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mayor Jackson. Mayor Cartwright, roll call.
I'm here. Mike Bell. Mike Bell.
Here.
Andy Burke. Jeremy Bivens. Michael Brady.
Here.
Kevin Brooks. Chuck Burris. Philip Cagle. Philip
Mayor
Cagle.
Cagle is here, Keith.
Okay. Keith Cartwright here. Doug Collins.
Here.
Jim Coppinger.
Dan Sade representing.
Okay. D. Gary Davis.
Here.
John Gentry. I know he's here, so. Kelly Gibbs. Robbie Hatcher. Robbie Hatcher. David Jackson.
Here.
Bill James.
Here.
Avery Johnson. Dwayne Land. Gary Lou Allen.
Here.
Warren Mackey. Mark Myers. Erskine Oglesby.
Here.
Greg Ridley.
Here.
Ed Rumley.
Here.
George Thacker. Ron Travis.
Here.
Senator Bo Watson. Shannon Whitfield.
Here.
Okay, Nancy Sutherland.
Here.
John Prophet.
I know he's on here.
He
Okay.
is.
All right.
And Keith, Laura Smith was on for Jeremy Bivens. I don't know if she
I
got
didn't
to
hear that.
chime in.
Laura
Yes,
Smith.
I'm here. I wasn't sure if I should say yes to his name.
Yes, ma'am, you should.
Okay, we got it. All right, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Cartwright. I would like to remind everyone to please state your name after you make a motion. All votes will be recorded as a roll call. However, in the interest of time, unless members have any objection, I will only be asking for any opposing votes. So if none are expressed, then we will move as that the item was unanimous approved. Minutes were previously emailed and part of your packets. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve, Cartwright.
Second.
Second, Mayor James.
Okay, any revisions, additions, or corrections? If not, any opposing votes to approving the minutes? If not, the minutes are approved unanimously. I hope we've got John Gentry on, do we?
Yes, sir. He should be on now.
Okay, we'll move on to Finance Committee report. John Gentry, Chairman of Finance Committee, has a budget amendment and will give us our April financial statements.
Bear with me, I'm reading these off a 2-inch screen, so
Bless your heart.
we'll see. The Finance Committee did meet on June 15th. They would reviewed the Budget Amendment 3 and then the April financials and also fiscal year 2021 proposed budget. First of all, begin with Budget Amendment 3. It reflects an increase in revenues of $1.2 million. $1,257,960 to be exact. It should have footnotes on the bottom to indicate the changes in the funding, but primarily it's $616,000 contribution from a private donor to the Southeast Foundation for the installation of an elevator and second floor renovations at the South Cumberland Learning and Resource Center in Tracy City. There's also an increase in Families First COVID-19 funding and $500,000 from the City of Chattanooga's IDB for a COVID-19 bridge loan program. The expenditures reflect primarily as pass-through expenses. There is a slight increase in dues and subscriptions and insurance. Finance Committee, as I mentioned, did review this and recommends approval and comes in the form of a motion.
Okay, we have a motion for the budget amendment. Do I have a second?
Second, Oglesby.
Thank you. Any questions or comments about the amendment? If not, motion to approve. Any opposed? If not, motion passes unanimously. April financial statements, John.
Yes, they should be to the members as well, beginning with your statement of financial position, your balance sheet. Assets ending April of $14,419,000. Actually, I got a typo on mine. I can't see it exactly. 14,414,000, I believe it says 975.
Yeah.
Sorry. Against liabilities of 2,522,149 with a fund balance of $11,892,826. Year to date, the month ended with $1,025,033 of revenues in excess of expenses. And this is due to the infusion of capital, which include that loan fund we mentioned from the City of Chattanooga, also the contribution to the foundation as mentioned earlier, and the loan loss reserve of $100,000. You adjust that, you end up with revenues in excess of $19,000. Not nearly as good as it looked, but hey, we'll take it. I'd like to stick with that $1 million plus, but actually back everything else is actually $19,000. On your consolidated statement, 10 out of 12 months, you should be at 83%. Revenues are at 82% because of that new capital. It's not really programmatic funds, which are lagging behind due to not being able to perform the participant services and workforce. Line items exceeding budget at 83% is insurance, and we know that's usually always paid at one lump sum. That's usually always does run over. Dues and subscriptions, and we talked about that in the budget committee. We just didn't budget sufficiently, and that'll be addressed. Marketing and miscellaneous was a reprint of the regional travel guide. Line item 24 had total operating expenses are at 72% or $850,000 below budget. Your summarized statement of revenues and expenses by department. Statement reflects the disbursement of Sequatchie County's remote revolving loan fund and 52 small business assistance grants due to COVID-19. And administrative overhead is at 5.24%. Your April 13th financial statements are recommended for approval as presented, and this comes in the form of a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Oglesby.
Thank you, Mr. Oglesby. Any questions or comments about the financial statements?
Mr. Chairman, you do have a collection of a lot, I think, extra documents this time that we usually don't always give at the board meetings, but these are the documents, such as the trial balance. Those are things that we do, the Finance Committee do get in all of our meetings. So a little bit of extra information for you this time.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. So is there any opposition? Not, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. On to the proposed fiscal year 21 budget. Revenues are reflecting at $19,438,750. Specific increases are outlined on page 2 with footnotes. This is an increase of $2,375,190 from the previous year. Expenditures on page 3. Of note, the contract services line item increase of $331,000 is for new revenues. All other revenues reflected in pass-through expenses. Again, you have footnotes that are provided. The major funding cut of 9% across the board in workforce programs. 80% of expenditure rule has been waived, allowing us to carry over funding, which softens this decrease somewhat. Page 4, it shows the allocation of revenues and expenses by department. Pages 5 through 8 show details by individual department. Page 9 shows proposed total payroll and reflects no increases in compensation at this time. Page 10 are your capital expenses. And although IT expenses are not technically no pun intended there. Capital expense, management prefers to outline these ongoing expenses since annually this makes up $250,000 to $300,000 of the budget. Really just not a better place to put it. Focus is being made on providing staff with technology upgrades to be able to work from alternate work site locations. Also includes 3 new vehicle leases being proposed. And we talk about those, we're able to be reimbursed on the vehicle leases, whereas if we owned them outright, we're not always able to get reimbursement from the programs. Vehicles with over 100,000 miles make up about 55% of our total maintenance and upkeep. Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee recommends this budget and it comes in the form of a motion. And Beth and Jolly, I hope we're on there to answer any questions.
We are.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the 2021 budget. Do I have a second?
Second, Oglesby.
Okay. Any questions or comments about the budget? No questions, no comments. Okay, motion and a second. Is there any opposition to approving the 21 budget? Not, the motion passes unanimously. I wish we could do our motions like that on our budgets locally like that each year. That was pretty easy, Beth, I tell you.
We do it that way in Marine County.
I'm going to credit Jolly and the finance staff for giving you all the footnotes and all the information that you need. So we just appreciate y'all's participation and support, and we try to make it as transparent and easy for you all to understand.
Now, Beth, are you implying that ours is more complicated because we don't do that?
I can only speak for the development district.
A motion, if anyone is opposed, that's a great motion because that would cause problems. They wouldn't know whether to say something or not, probably wouldn't, so that'd be a good thing. Okay, Beth, let's move on to the financial statements from May.
Okay, I'm going to take just a point of privilege for just a second because I know Senator Bell and Representative Ron Travis are on and they may have to leave us. As you all know, last year, development districts in Tennessee took a cut in the final budget that was approved that ended up representing about $20,000 to us as an agency. And you all basically went to Nashville prior to tornadoes, prior to the pandemic, and visited with our legislators. And I'm pleased to tell you, I never expected it, but our funding was restored in this year's budget and had wholesale support of both the Senate and the House. And that's a credit to Senator Bell and to Representative Travis and to Representative Hazelwood and to Ken Yeager and Rick Tillis and our entire delegation. So please convey your appreciation to them in that regard. As you all know, these are the dollars that help support our planning staff that works with you all. So just wanted to share that. So thank you so much. In the given climate, we really didn't expect that to be able to happen, but that's a credit to y'all's leadership. So thanks.
Hey, Beth, if I could add there.
Dan
everyone-
Howe too supported us. I didn't say them all, but they all supported us.
They all did, and we do appreciate it. Remind everyone, was it last fall when we were meeting in Ray County And we hit up Senator Yeager about why did they do this, and he informed us that he really didn't realize they had done that at the last minute like that, and that he would follow up this year and do everything he could to get it restored. So we really appreciate him doing that and everyone for helping out. It was great.
All right, on to May financial statements, which are in your packet. These are hot off the press, so Finance Committee has not had an opportunity to look at this. Total assets are at $14,148,044. There's nothing unusual under the assets. However, you will note a significant decrease in the cash restricted from the April financial statements. And as you may recall, in April, we had an infusion of capital for the purpose of making COVID-19 bridge loans to small businesses with Chattanooga's IDB funds, their HUD 108 funds, and we did grant assistance in conjunction with Sequatchie County. That line item is down by almost $1 million. So in the last 30 to 45 days, your lending staff has closed that many loans and dispersed that much money to small businesses. So that's a pretty major undertaking. Your liabilities are at $2,899,110. There's a fund balance of $11,248,934. Year to date, we're still showing $381,141 of revenues in excess of expenses. Again, I'm going to caution you all to refrain from getting excited. It's not quite that good. Excess revenues are due in part to a large loan loss reserve of $154,000, and also, again, the infusion of the capital. When you adjust the statement, basically we have about $50,000 worth of revenues in excess of expenses. That's primarily due to the freeze on hiring and vacant positions, as well as no increased compensation and savings on travel. In your consolidated statement of revenues and expenses, you're at 11 months out of the 12. So you want to be revenues at about 92% or better. We're lagging a little bit behind, only at 85%. Again, that is primarily due to the fact that we have the ability to obligate some participant dollars to WIOA eligible clients. As you all can anticipate, right now there's little or no training going on at post-secondary institutions, and folks have pretty much been furloughed or laid off, so we're not doing a lot of OJTs or incumbent worker training dollars. We anticipate that that will rapidly pick up once the federal unemployment stops at the end of July. Expenses, only line items in excess or the budget are pretty much the same ones we mentioned before. Line item 15, that's insurance, which is at 103%. Again, a little bit due to the workers' comp, it being paid first part of the quarter. Your budget amendment will cover this next month and just equal out. Dues and subscriptions, we talked about this before. We just under budgeted this, especially when it came to certain license renewals for MZ data and some of the other databases.
Beth, could you unmute your microphone again for us? I'm sorry, I'm trying to cut out
I'm
some background
sorry.
noise.
Okay, there you go. Your total operating expenses can be found on line item 22. They're at 79% or $965,139 below the budget. Next is your summarized statement by department. Your overhead is at 5.24%. You'll see a real positive number up on basically the admin line item SETD. Again, that's due to the foundation money. If you'll move to the next one, Chad. This is your summary of cash flow for the year. If you'll look at the bottom, I think the most notable change on this has been in the revolving loan funds. Mayor Ridley will share with you that we were able to put $60,000 back in his revolving loan fund because we sold the advanced automatic building in which his loan fund had participated. Sequatchie County is down to a pitiful $19, I believe. But we dispersed, again, small grant assistance to about 52 small businesses. His commission approved that change in their program. And then you'll see the city of Chattanooga's loan funds is down by $1 million from the previous. And that is, again, due to the closing of all of the loans that have been taken care of. I'll be glad to answer any questions. This is the first time you all have seen the statement, so you'll need a motion and a second to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve as presented?
I'd like to make a motion to approve as presented, Oglesby.
Okay, good, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mary James.
Thank you. Motions to approve and seconded. Do I have anyone in opposition? Not, motion passes unanimously. Okay, Mayor Cartwright, Chairman of Personnel Committee.
Let's see. Hold on just a minute. I'm sorry, Chairman. I'm prepared here.
We're
Okay.
working so hard today. While you're getting yours together, I know Sharita Allen joined us representing Mayor Burke. So she had sent me a little notification that she was waiting to get into the meeting. So thanks, Sharita, for joining us.
The Personnel Committee met. Let's see, I'm doing this off the cuff. I don't have those documents, but I apologize for this.
May
The,
1st.
May
We met
1st.
May 1st.
I've got them right. Got them right here. Sorry about that. Located. The Personnel Committee did meet May the 1st at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. We present via teleconference was David Jackson, Keith Cartwright, Philip Cagle, Erskine Oglesby, Bill James, George Thacker, Gary Davis, and John Gentry. Staff participating was Beth Jones, Chuck Hammons, Don Kellerman, and Maddie Parton. Personnel Committee Chairman called the meeting to order. Maddie Parton called the roll. We looked at workplace protocols, draft leave policies, and the work from home policies. These come as a recommendation to the you guys that we pass these said policies. Each of you, I guess, Chairman, should have a copy of those policies in hand.
They do.
Okay.
So everyone has what he's talking about, the 4 different things or 3 different things in front of you, you should have. And it comes in the form of a motion from the Personnel Committee. It's already been approved. Do I have a second to approve?
Second,
Oglesby.
Brady.
Second by Brady, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or comments about personnel policies? A question I have, Mr. Cartwright, are these very different from the SETD ones that we discussed yesterday?
They are a little bit different. I know that most of these policies are in line with the SETD policies somewhat. They're not exact. They are somewhat in line. I know the bereavement policy, which is not inclusive of this meeting, is different, but we're not discussing that at this point. But these policies, the work from home policy, the leave policy, and the workplace protocols are somewhat in line. They're not exact, but they are somewhat in line.
All right, I appreciate that. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Personnel Committee recommendation. Is there anyone to vote in opposition? If not, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mayor Cartwright. Moving on to,
Mayor Davis?
yes,
If I could just interject for just a minute, as the Personnel Committee and officers know, we've never had an alternative work site policy. And so we moved to put one in place because everybody obviously had been sent home because of orders to shelter in place, stay at home. That policy has been in place automatically across the board, but it will terminate July the 6th. It is no longer automatic that you can work from home or from an alternative work site. And if you'll notice in the policy, we set a process in place by which requests will have to be processed by your immediate supervisor, your department, and executive management to allow that to continue. So it will be more defined. We will continue to probably allow people with underlying health conditions to work from home. We will allow, our job's not, paperwork's in the office, but the job's not in the office anyway. Our case managers often travel from home to go visit elderly clients, come back to the office to load information up into databases. Our guardian is out most of the time. We will have to have everybody report back just because of inventory control, knowing what devices are out and with whom. Software updates, we're working off of the cloud. You can't get the software updates from the cloud. And then just monitoring productivity and addressing challenges that occur as a result. But about 50%, 50%, 50-60% of our staff has been back pretty much full time for the last month or so. So I just wanted to share that.
okay, Beth, thank you. Staffing updates, Don Kellerman, Chief of Staff.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On staffing front, sad to report that we have employed Beth Taylor to work in our aging department as information assistance specialist, passed away in April. Emmeline Bradford, who is our housing coordinator, his last day of work was June 19th, this past Friday. She has accepted a position with the Chattanooga Housing Authority. We currently have 61 full-time staff, 1 part-time staff. We do have current open positions in workforce for a Q&A specialist. We have aging, which obviously needs an information assistance specialist. And in planning, we have the open position for a housing coordinator. And then we also, depending on potential grant funding, still have a vacant planning position as well that will be addressed upon available funds.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Moving on, EDA loan fund operating plans. Todd Byram.
Well, good morning. How are you? Couple of things we're going to cover is our existing loan fund plan. We're having it amended or requesting an amendment from the EDA. For example, our current loan fund, we have a maximum loan amount we can do of $150,000. Our total leverage is 1/3 of a project, which means we can only put in 33% of the total project cost. And the other 67% come from a combination of bank financing and borrower equity. The current loan fund, we have three different awards that we got over a period of time. So we have an RLF 1, 2, and 3. And 2 of those loan funds are not available in the city limits of Chattanooga and Cleveland because of population. Our loan fund terms will not change. We're looking at our percentage rates staying between 4% and 8%, and our terms between 5 and 20 years, both of those driven by the collateral and what the money is used for, be it working capital or equipment or real estate. What we're requesting from EDA to amend the plan to is to increase our maximum loan amount size to $250,000, increase our leverage position where we can do 50% of a total project as opposed to just 1/3. We want to combine all 3 of those loan funds into one and operate under the same guidelines for all 3, where there's no restrictions for our 13 county area. We can use it anywhere in that 13 counties. There again, our loan funds will not change. And this change will be temporary for 1 year through May of 2021. And then we'll redo our plan, which is due at that time. We have to redo it every 5 years, and we'll make our permanent plan to meet these guidelines as well. So this change is just for a temporary for 1 year. And then the second thing we're looking at is EDA came to us and basically asked us to apply for a CARES Act award loan plan for a $1.1 million was what was basically.
Hey, Todd,
yeah.
let's hold up just a minute because we'll need to take action on the existing loans.
Okay.
Then you can talk about the new money for
Okay.
the board members. In all three of these loan funds, there's probably a little bit over $1 million. This will alleviate some of the restrictions and help us to get that money out to help a lot of these businesses that are struggling during the pandemic. I hope that both Commissioner Whitfield and Ted heard these monies are available in our 13 county area. And so that includes Dade, Catoosa, and Walker counties. We have had loan money in the past in some of your smaller businesses, but this would make those monies available. And we've talked with bankers. This is what they feel would be the most helpful. So EDA will require you all as a board to accept these proposed changes for the next year on that loan fund.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the revisions that have been explained? Come on.
Motion made. Mayor James.
Okay, Mayor James, do I have a second?
Second, Oglesby.
All right, is there any questions, comments of these, of Beth or Todd concerning the revisions? If not, anyone in opposition to approving the revisions? Not, the motion passes unanimously. Now move on to the operating plan, the CARES Recovery Assistance. Todd.
Okay, we'll be looking to, we're looking for to submit a plan or to submit an application and adopt a plan for this $1.1 million new loan fund. It's part of the CARES Act from EDA. The guidelines with it, and this will be a totally separate fund, or it's a grant award of $1.1 million plus $110,000 on top of that for admin cost. It'll be a 2-year grant disbursement period. So we have 2 years to get this on the street. They would like to have it distributed more quickly, which I don't think is going to be a problem. The purpose is to assist businesses that have been negatively impacted by the coronavirus. The minimum interest rate on loan funds can go as low as 0%, and our leverage will be as little as 5%, which means we could do 95% of a project if situation allowed. They would have to demonstrate that there is credit that is not otherwise available to them via regular financing. So we would probably get a turn down letter or a certified letter from the borrower that they were unable to get funds for whatever their need may be at the time. Our reporting requirements will be the same as we have on our funds now, but it will be a separate report and be tracked separately from our other funds. We are going to target business and industry that have been injured by the coronavirus pandemic. And our marketing program is going to go through local and regional banks to use this money through participations if possible, where we're working with banks and buying participations from them on some of their loans. And that way we could use the bank underwriting procedures, and the bank would be responsible for doing the servicing of the loans and would be just sending us a check for our payment every month for that piece of the loan. And this would expedite the approval by waiving our loan committee. It would still go before our loan committee, but it would not have the same underwriting criteria. We would use the bank's underwriting and verify that it was all accurate. And let's see, that all this money would still be available in our 13 county region with no restrictions there. And this has the same timeline from May of this year to May of 2022. So this is a separate plan all by itself.
Okay, Todd. So we need a motion to adopt this operating plan for these care recovery assistance program. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt Oglesby.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it. George Thacker.
Hey, George Thacker. Okay, any questions or comments of Todd about this program? If not, is there anyone in opposition to the motion? Not, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Beth, I believe you're going to talk about the workforce interlocal agreement.
This was also sent in the materials that you all received. You all have seen this agreement before, and John Profit is on as the chairman of the workforce board, and then Michelle is on as well. But in essence, this document kind of lays out the structure of the delivery of the WIOA program in our region. As you all may recall, Hamilton County is the grant recipient of all those dollars. As such, Mayor Coppinger by default is the chief local elected official, unless you all want to change that and take on that responsibility. He has the privilege, with y'all's approval, of designating the fiscal agent, which ends up being the Southeast Tennessee Development District, and allows us to hire the staff to the board, which is the group that Michelle heads up in the agency. There's really not a lot new in the document. You know, I will share with you, you might want to look at page 3. Again, first and foremost, Mayor Coppinger ends up being liable for the funds. However, as part of the delivery system, you all share in that liability as well. And also, if for some reason we can't resolve disallowed costs, but as your administrative entity, we're not going to let that happen, because you all would move real quickly to find another entity to take care of these dollars. Michelle's here, John's here. We'll be glad to answer any questions, but you all will need to move this document for approval, and then it does require individual signatures. As you all know, there's nothing simple when it comes to labor.
Okay, so this motion, I believe, Beth, needs to be a motion to approve the interlocal agreement between the
Yes.
local elected officials. Is that right?
That is
And
correct.
Southeast Development District. Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Mayor,
Cartwright.
So moved.
I heard Greg Reedley and Mayor Cartwright both.
Pick one.
Actually, you didn't hear me, Beth, but I will make the motion if you
Oh,
need.
good. Thank you, Greg.
That was me, Beth.
I'll second Cartwright.
Okay, motion and a second. Any questions or comments? If not, is there anyone against the motion? If not, the motion passes unanimously. Moving on,
And
program.
staff will be sending this around to collect signatures. And I think this agreement, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, stays in place until June 30th, 2022. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on. Chuck Hammonds, Community Development and Planning.
Yes, sir. Thank you all for allowing us to serve you. You should have received a grants report and a community and economic development report. Plus, you should have received a document about the CDBG COVID funding that the state of Tennessee is going to get. The state's going, it's currently out now. They had to write a work plan or action plan to amend their current plan. And it is actually out for public comment through today, and then they'll have to get that approved through HUD. It's $16,813 and some change will be additional CDBG funding. And this on your screen is the areas where it will be spent, okay? Most of it, $10 million, will go into broadband expansion and internet access, with applicants being some type of partnership between a local government and a internet provider. They can get up to $1 million. Then there's a business support and technical assistance. That's mainly going to go to businesses that have less than 25 employees in a Main Street or Tennessee downtown community. That's to help them disaster planning, succession planning, stuff like that. Public services, you'll also see that'll be a community meals, food delivery, support food banks, and then the economic money that will flow through that section will also be job training for individuals. So we're trying to sort all this out. There'll also be some funds for healthcare and first responders. I did touch base back with ECD to ask their staff what the money could be used for. And my understanding is it cannot be used for construction. We had some ideas we need to do, but this is just the first round of CDBG funding, additional funding that will come through. I was told there will be an additional second round that they've not received. So they'll try and probably do some differences there. Nobody has any questions about that. You also should have received one piece of paper about proposed one-time funding from the state of Tennessee to the cities and the counties. This is what come out of the committee at the House level and the Senate level. This is the money that each community will be receiving. It is my understanding that there is no application will be required, and each local government will receive the funds by July 31st. There are no restrictions either. So you can use these funds to put in your budget how you see fit. But these are the official numbers for everyone. I did want to touch base that while we were shut down and sheltering at home, business did go on. Our planning staff was able to do a lot through Zoom meetings with the planning commission. So plats and stuff were being approved. Tourism was a very big help in that they were put together short videos and newspaper stories about local businesses and local that were still serving people for take-home meals and delivery, stuff like that. So we still did get a lot of work done. I guess the last thing, sir, is housing. As you know, Emmeline resigned and took another position. So Sam Said will be the transition forward for that program as we look to see how we're going to staff that, and probably partner with SETD to do some of the technical stuff. Work right up. But in our agency and our staff will be pushing the paperwork, driving the projects. That's all I have right now. Does anybody have any questions, ridicule, comments?
Any questions for Chuck or ridicule? If not, thank you, Chuck. We appreciate that report. Okay, moving on to CD Economic Development, Stephanie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can see the report that was sent to you all. I will say that project activity has been slow throughout the pandemic, but it has still been moving forward. We had a couple of announcements there that you can see throughout the region, the CETA region. So far within the quarter, we received 11 requests for informations. There have been site visits taking place throughout the region. Those have been done virtually. We are moving more towards that, virtual site visits. So we've been taking time to sites that we're helping to market. We've been putting those online as far as using Google Earth and doing virtual site visits that way. I think that's a trend that's going to continue. So we're taking some training and doing that. We do have a couple of in-person site visits coming up this afternoon and later this week. So that's all I have to report at this time.
Anyone have any questions for Stephanie? If not, thank you, Stephanie. We'll move on. Aging and Disability, Chris Grant. Hey, Chris.
Unmute myself, sorry. Good afternoon, or maybe still good morning. Thank you. You do have your report. My report is in your packet as well. If we could bring that up, Chad, that would be helpful. And it's just it's mostly an overview of all the work that we've accomplished since the beginning of the pandemic. The one thing that I did want to point out, there is tremendous need out there in all 10 of our counties. And we have added over 1,600 additional clients to our roles that we're serving in different ways, whether it's through restaurant meals in 5 of our counties, or through grocery delivery, which is a new service that we've added for My Ride. When they're not able to, we kind of reduced rides to just very essential trips. But we also can have volunteers that assist with groceries, where they can pick up groceries for individuals. So we're putting a lot of different services in place for managing the services that we've always had in place in different ways. For example, with our home and community-based services, we are doing telephone assessments and getting services started. We have had some folks that chose to put their services on hold because they didn't want individuals in their home. That is slowly, at one point we were, I think, close to 100 people that were on hold, and now it's less than 50. So those numbers continue to drop. And then with our relative caregiver program, our family caregiver programs, we are doing support groups and different enrichment activities with those families remotely, and they're participating. So those services are going on as they would have, just in a different format now. So we're very excited about that. And then with our nutrition program, the number of meals that we're serving continues to increase. And you can see right there by the numbers that on average, we are delivering over 2,600 meals a day in our region. It's either through our congregate sites that have pickup, just people drive and pick up their meals, they're handed to them, or through our restaurants where we have the same service in place. And then we also have delivery for those individuals that are not able to come and pick up their meals. So, does anybody have any questions?
Questions for Chris? All right, stay with us, folks. We're getting there. Thank you, Chris, for that report. Michelle Holt, Career and Workforce Development.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to start with saying that obviously we've had a very challenging time in workforce since the COVID pandemic hit, and I'm sure that many of you are very familiar with that as well. And I want to express my appreciation to you all with your patience with us during this process. I know many of your constituents struggled, to have connection with their unemployment claims and such. And, the American Job Centers typically are not where the unemployment claims are processed. That is handled through an online platform out of Nashville. And I know with the volume, just the sheer volume and trying to process those, it created such a bottleneck that I know you had many of your community members that were struggling with that. And sincerely, we hope that we've been able to provide some kind of help. I know I've talked with several of you throughout the process, and I just do appreciate your patience through all that. Hopefully we'll get through that soon. I think from the last comments that we heard, there was a slowing of the claims. So that's something on the positive side, I guess. I'll call your attention to the impact on employment report that was included in your packet. This will just give you some comments on the numbers of claims that were filed. Beginning in mid-March through the end of May, which is the last numbers that we reported, there was over almost 600,000 claims that were filed statewide. And then the continued claims reached were continued at about 325,000. Those were people that continued to file claims through that May 31st deadline. In Southeast, the new claims reached 13,578 about mid-April. You'll see those peaks, and then you'll see kind of the blue are the claims, and then the red is the continued claims, meaning the weekly certifications were continuing. At the bottom of the report, you'll see the largest impacts by industry, and then least impacted by industry there. That's just kind of give you some a snapshot of those that were coming in, how they were affected. We have had some warn notices that were issued. Some of those have resulted in permanent closures. A lot of those are just announcements where they were officially filed, meaning that they had more than 50 that were laid off. So not all of those were permanent closures that are listed there. That's just how the reporting comes in on those particular ones. Many of you will remember, due to the COVID pandemic in late March, we closed our American Job Centers to public traffic and went to a more virtual platform for service delivery, which created some challenges in itself. Many of the people that were wanting to utilize the center were wanting to file a claim, and none of that's done there. Anyway, but we were able to pull staff, and the Department of Labor was able to train some of the local staff to assist with those claims from a work from home type of setting, to help get through some of the backlog claims that came in. On June 1st, we opened back up by appointment only. I mean, it's been rather slow coming in. That was only in our 2 comprehensive centers in Chattanooga and Athens, but we did provide the extended hours from 7 to 7, with the first couple of hours being reserved for those that had the vulnerable populations, any of the elderly, those that might have compromised immune systems, and that sort of thing. We are starting to see some increase in traffic, but I think a lot of it, we were kind of wanting to see how the impact was with the individuals that were maybe might potentially have complaints about their unemployment claims or that. And so far, we've not seen any. We have been able to have security provided. The state Department of Labor and Workforce Development provided some additional funds for security coverage. So we were able to hire security for all centers to cover that, just in case there were some issues around unemployment with individuals not getting paid and such. We are moving to looking to reopen all of the centers, including the 3 affiliates, the first full week in July, with an increased capacity by appointment only. And what that would mean, initially we had just a lower capacity number so we could abide by the social distancing and such, but we would probably increase that just a little bit with space allowed in those centers. And then of course, phase 3 and phase 4, we still don't have dates set for those, and we'll just have to continue to monitor the activity around. So far, we've been lucky that we've not had anyone test positive for COVID in any of our centers, or we've not been notified that any individuals that have been in for an appointment have. If that were to happen, it may require that we close for a couple of days to do some deep cleaning and such, but we would just have to, and that would have to be released out to the media once that happens. If there are no questions on that section, I'll pause for just a moment. I'll move into the next piece of my report.
Any questions for Michelle? If not, go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. The next thing I want to call your attention to is the executive summary that was included in your packet. As many of you remember, earlier this year, we procured Thomas P. Miller and Associates to help us with some of our strategic planning that is required. This year was our planning year. When we do a full plan, we were able to have our meetings, and luckily we were able to get those completed before the pandemic came. So we were able to do, I think, a total of 5 sessions, 3 out in our communities with our employers and business leaders, and then we had 2 with our partners and our training providers, where we were able to gather information from what their needs and concerns were. You'll see there, and I won't read all 10 of the items there, but we were able to identify some strategies that came out of those sessions, and some of the surveys that were done one-on-one. And what we'll do is we'll utilize those in our compliance document that has to be delivered to the Department of Labor and Workforce Development by the end of the year. And typically what we'll do is break those down into more attainable, because this is a 3-year strategic plan. We'll focus probably the first year on number 1 will be dealing with the COVID pandemic and how we continue to provide services in this new world virtually. We are trying to look at new ways to do that and use technology to reach out to individuals. Increase promotion of the American Job Centers, and a lot of that may be done through access points. What this helped us realize a little bit with the COVID pandemic was that we probably need more places where people can go in their community to just access a location where they could utilize a computer, and maybe it's not necessarily called a full-blown American Job Center. It's just a point of contact in a local community, maybe at like a library. There is an initiative to put access points in all of our high schools so that our seniors, juniors, and seniors can access American Job Center services that way. So that'll be heavily worked on this year. And then, of course, expanding work-based learning opportunities. We all know that there's a big push for the work and learn model around your registered apprenticeships, your on-the-job training, and then further developing out our pipeline with the youth programs and career pathways and that sort of thing. And then also, last but not least, was partner coordination, staff development, and then, of course, as always, rural services, delivering services in our rural communities. Obviously, there's a need to try to do more outreach into those communities with the transportation continuing to be an issue. What we have realized, again, there's always positives that come out of any bad situation. You have to look at things differently. What we have learned is that there's probably potential to serve individuals in rural communities virtually, and that we need to look at ways to expand some of those services into those communities that way. There was a link at the bottom of your executive summary, which will take you to the full plan with Thomas P. Miller and Associates, the strategic plan. Again, that's not the compliance document that we have to submit to the state, but this is the plan that we'll use in developing out our strategies and how we improve workforce development in our region over the course of the next 3 years. Mr. Chairman, that completes my report, and I'll take.
Okay, Michelle. Thank you for that. Is there any questions or comments for Michelle? It's been a busy time for your area. Hopefully it gets a little less busy in the near future. I hope things seem to be getting back. And I don't know if you're seeing that reflection yet, but a lot of people seem to be getting back to work. I hope they are. Is there anything else to come before the board today? If not, you have the upcoming dates for our meetings. Our next meeting is September the 22nd, and we hopefully will be back in person for that meeting. Don't know where yet. Beth's still working on a larger area if we're going to do it in person so that we can abide by the social distancing thing. Is Senator Bell, Representative Travis still on? I don't mean to be putting them on the spot.
Yes, I'm here.
Who's that?
Travis.
Okay, Senator Bell's probably got his hand in a hole trying to get a hold of the catfish.
I bet.
I just want to say again, thank you so much. I mean, whenever you all went back into session to cut the budget, I naturally thought, oh my goodness, what are they going to do to that local funding that some of us have really used to get our budgets balanced this year? And instead of cutting it, you added to it. That was amazing. And I really hope you convey to everyone else how important that was to local governments, counties. It was, and we had already sent in our application. We have a list of how we're going to spend the money like was originally requested. We're still going to abide by that, by the way. But we really appreciate it. I don't know what we local governments would have done this year if the state hadn't have had that mechanism in place. So please.
Well, we thank you guys for everything you do, and we hope we can continue to serve together and have a good future ahead of us.
We appreciate it. I appreciate the commissioner's comments whenever the subject came up, and he said, well, they need this money as much as we do. And he was exactly right. It would have been an easy thing to have added back to your coffers, but thank you for leaving it and then even adding to it, which was much more than we expected. If there's nothing else.
You're more than welcome.
Okay, and please, if Senator Bell is gone, please share that with him, someone. I hope you will. There's nothing else to come before the board. Our next meeting, September the 22nd. Please remember, do your part. Let's stay safe and stay apart, okay? We're adjourned.
So the Sethra board members, if you could stay on, and we will start a meeting just as soon as we've cleared out. Chuck's got to turn the meeting over to Jennifer, and then we will begin our meeting. Okay, Jennifer has control of the meeting. Mayor Jackson, when you're ready, we can start.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to the SETD Executive Committee meeting today. Just finished up the district meeting. We will, as Mayor Davis said, we'll be following Governor Executive Order 34. We will also do our vote the same way Mayor Davis did his. We'll take a motion a second. If there's any opposition, instead of doing a roll call vote, that way it'll speed things up. Not take as long to get through our meeting. Mayor Gentry, would you lead the invocation, please?
Did I get unmuted?
Yes, you're unmuted. Yes.
All right, thank you. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for your guidance and your word that you've given us, Lord, that it applies not only in our private lives, but in our public lives, Lord. I just ask you to give us your grace, Lord. I ask for wisdom and the obedience to follow that wisdom and the courage. Lord, be with everyone today in all the communities, all those who are sick, Lord. I pray for guidance to all those in elected leadership with us and above us, Lord. Give them wisdom, Lord. May they search you in your heart and your word for the guidance that we need. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mayor Gentry. Okay, you will see there's a last minute change to the agenda due to a funder mandate, and you'll see that new agenda on your screen here. It come up at the last minute. Jennifer, you will please call roll.
Okay. David Jackson.
Here.
Bill James.
Here.
Keith Cartwright.
Here.
Greg Ridley.
Here.
Philip Cagle. Gary Davis.
Here.
Michael Brady. Paul Wayne Evans.
Here.
John Gentry.
Here.
Chuck Burris. Robbie Hatcher. George Thacker. Gary Lou Allen.
Here.
Dwayne Land. Leslie Dell. Barbara Funioli. I think she just joined. Otto Appellate. And Jeannie Shelton.
Thank you, Jennifer. We do have a quorum.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, you should have received a copy of the March 31st minutes. Do I hear a motion we approve these minutes?
Motion made, Mayor James.
Do we have a second?
Second, Cartwright.
Okay, anyone opposed to the minutes? Okay, they approve unanimously. Okay, next thing on our agenda is committee updates. County Executive Cartwright on personnel committee updates.
Yes, I'll be more in line this time around. The Personnel Committee met on two different occasions on May the 4th, 2020, relative to the paid administrative leave policy. Nancy Sutherland, Executive Director, presented the new administrative leave policy and that was drafted due to the COVID-19 and the effects it has on SETD employees. The highlights policy was drafted, emailed, and became effective April the 27th, 2020. This would become applicable to employees once they lost full-time or part-time hours. This policy is mainly for the drivers, homemakers/aides, and the home inspectors. Mayor Brady suggested changing the language of the policy to say state civil health emergency from public health emergency. All other members agreed with this change. A motion was made to accept this policy with the language changed by all members of the committee. So it comes as a motion from the committee that this paid administrative leave policy be passed.
Do we have a motion for personnel committee? Do we have a second?
A second. Mayor Evans.
Thank you, Mayor Evans. Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Anyone opposed to this a motion by the personnel committee? Not hearing any, that passes unanimous. All right, County Executive Carr, I think you have 2 or 3 things left to go over
Yeah.
that.
Personnel Committee also met June 22nd, yesterday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. The following items were discussed and action was taken on: the succession plan. This is reviewed every couple of years. With this update, it would change from 2 assistant executive directors to only 1, followed by the fiscal officer and then the community sales services director. All were in favor. The motion passed unanimously by the Personnel Committee. So Chairman, you may want to take these one at a time, or we can wrap them all up and do them at once.
I think let's do them one at a time.
Okay. So the succession plan up first.
We have a motion from the chairman of the Personnel Committee. Who have a second?
Second, Mary James.
Second, Mayor James. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, do I hear any opposed to the recommendation of the Personnel Committee? Not hearing any, this motion passes unanimously. County Exec Cartwright.
Up next, the telecommunicating policy. This policy would allow staff to work from home on a semi-permanent basis. This would still be in effect even after the pandemic has been settled. This would be a benefit to employees that were able to work from home effectively without having contact with the public. It would be based on merit as well. There were much discussion about this with some opposing, but ultimately the motion passed, and it comes as a motion from the Personnel Committee.
Okay, you've heard the motion from County Executive Cartwright on the telecommunicating agreement. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mayor Evans. Questions or comments? Okay, not hearing any. Do I hear any that might be opposed to this agreement? Not hearing anyone opposed to it, it passes unanimously. County Executive Cartwright.
Up next came the bereavement policy. The revision to this policy would expand to additional qualifying members such as step parents, step siblings, aunts, uncles, etc. When this was voted on, it was divided equally, causing it fail to pass. So that policy actually failed. Then let's see, the committee felt it best to hold off on a vote until we get the bereavement policy corrected with something all the members could agree on. So we'll reconvene on this specific policy, get our ducks in a row, so to speak. Up next is the EEO and harassment policy. With a recent Supreme Court ruling to include the LGBTQ community under Title VI, we have amended our EEO and harassment policy. The motion passed, and it comes as a recommendation that we accept this policy.
You've heard the motion from County Executive Cartwright on the EEO. It was approved by the Personnel Committee. Do I hear a motion or a second to his motion?
Second, Lou Allen.
Second by Lou Allen. Discussions or comments?
Has an attorney read this? Was this given under legal guidance? This is Mayor Gentry. We're working on some different language.
This was
Nancy,
This was the language that was given to us by our attorney. Once the ruling was made, we contacted our attorney. We contacted our attorney, and this was the wording that he had recommended that we put into our policies.
Okay. I'm just gonna let the department, those, I'll be voting no because we're working on something different under a different legal guidance. So I didn't want to have a record of two different things. So just to let the committee know.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Do I hear any that are opposed?
No.
No. Being with just two noes, Do we need to take a roll call vote, Nancy, since we have a couple of no's?
Yes, sir, I believe we do.
Jennifer, will you do a roll call vote, please?
David Jackson,
No.
Bill James,
Yes.
Keith Cartwright,
Yes.
Greg Ridley,
Yes.
Gary Davis,
Yes.
Paul Wayne Evans,
Yes.
John Gentry,
No.
Gary Lou Allen,
Yes.
and Barbara Funielli. That's everybody.
Thank you, Jennifer. The ayes have it. County Exec Carr, anything else from Personnel Committee?
Well, I just want to say the entire handbook, the employee handbook, will be edited and updated once the bereavement policy is revised and brought forth. So that update won't be done until that time, and that will be done quickly. Nancy and I have discussed. So,
okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Personnel. Okay. Next thing on the agenda is Finance Committee. Mayor Gentry.
Thank you. The Finance Committee met June 16th via teleconference. Following items were discussed. The most important, I guess, was the 2021 proposed budget. Lynn and Nancy presented the proposed 2021 budget with a 3% cost of living wage increase for agency employees. This would go into effect January 1st, 2021, after there was a review of the grants at the end of the calendar year. The base budget without the 3% raise would be $4.664 million. And with the 3% raise, the budget would be $4.734 million. The Finance Committee made the motion to submit this to the board for final approval. It is the board's, the committee's recommendation to do our best to provide that 3% raise, subject to the funds being available. That does come in the form of a motion.
Thank you, Mayor Gentry. Do I have a second?
second, Cartwright.
Thank you, County Executive Cartwright. Have a motion, second. Questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, it carries unanimously. Thank you, Mayor Gentry.
I believe Lynn's going to do the financial statements for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, let me attempt to share the screen.
Got it.
I apologize. I was clumsy with this the other day, and I don't know that I'm any better today. Can anybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it the agency-wide budget summary?
Yes.
Okay. All right, first of all, I will go to the balance sheet. I'll go over a few things that were covered in the finance committee meeting last Tuesday. First is the balance sheet as of April 30th. Financial ratios are still in pretty good shape. The regular operating cash is down on average from the beginning of the year to around 1 million. This is the cash that constantly churns to fund all the programs. Cash flow has been delayed a bit due to the general environment. Now with all the health crisis issues, and moving down, we can see the operating fund balance as of April 30th at the $8,642,000. The next schedule we will look at, it will be the budget amendment schedule.
Lynn, your screen's not changing.
Okay. Did that change it?
It did.
It did.
Okay, the agency-wide budget amendment summary as of April 30th. We had a couple of contract amendments from our funding agencies. We received some additional funding in weatherization and CSBG, and these agencies sometimes hold federal year funds in reserve, see how the spending is going and allocate additional later. So through April, we've had an addition of 222,116 in weatherization, 105 and funds. The next page is our, did that change?
Yes.
The next page is our schedule of programs, revenue and expenditures through the month of April. That's 10 months into our fiscal year, or 83% of the budget year. And we see that from an operational standpoint, we have a net operating surplus, operating activities only of 169,000. However, with several bus purchases this fiscal year, we can see that the capital match column we have through April matched capital grants in the amount of 286,000. And this schedule is presented in the same way as our governmental fund statement is presented each year on our audit report. And on that statement, capital purchases are expensed completely in that period as capital outlay. I like to separate that from operations to get a better idea of how operations are going. And with those capital purchases and that match of 286,000, that drops down to the bottom line for an overall deficit as of April of $117,000. Some of the bus match shown will be recovered. We have some capital expenditures in suspense. We had a grant extension. I think that was just signed a couple of weeks ago. So I think that represents about a bus and a half of contract revenue that we should recover. Oh, so overall, given the circumstances, everything looks pretty good there. Excuse me. the next schedule, the agency-wide income statement. Again, through April, which is 80%, 83% of the budget year, there's a couple of noted items on there, one-time purchases during the year that skew the percentages. Again, dropping to the bottom line there, we see before the capital outlay, $169,000 in operating income, and dropping on down our grant revenue from capital grants, and compared to the total capital outlay, the difference in that represents our match of $286,000, which decreases our overall bottom line through April to $117,000 in deficit. That takes our operating fund balance from $8,759,000 at the beginning of the year to $8,642,000, which ties back to the balance sheet we previously looked at. The next page is a supplementary schedule that I provide. It just shows all the bus purchases, the total capital outlay, the grant revenue, and the matching funds that represent the $286,000. Lastly, the schedule that presents the agency administrative services cost pool. This pool is overhead, so to speak, that's allocated to all the programs. This page shows expenditures through April, and we see a total expenditure of close to $617,000, and that compared to the admin services budget of $792,000 represents 77.83% of the budget, which was about 5.5% under the budget. And the agency admin cost as a percentage of total expenditures through April was 4.64%. Does anyone have any questions or comment on any of the statements?
Thank you, Lynn. Any questions for Lynn?
Mr. Chairman, those were recommended for approval by the Finance Committee.
Okay, have a motion from the Finance Committee to have a second.
Second.
Second by Cartwright. Any questions or comments? Not hearing any. All those, is there anyone opposed? Please let us know. Okay, it passes unanimously. So thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Mayor Gentry.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulty.
Hey, we're living in a new world. Don't worry about it, Lynn. Okay, next thing on the agenda is program updates. Chris Kleehammer.
Good morning, everyone. I think Jennifer will be taking over the screen again to put up a couple of, there we go. Two things on the agenda. One is the safety plan. The Federal Transit Administration requires this year that all small urban and large urban agencies develop and submit a safety plan that's approved by their board. Our rural transit does not have to do one, but Cleveland does. TDOT contracted with a consultant. They developed this plan statewide with many of the small urbans, including Cleveland. The plan is here. It's been passed by the consultant and several TDOT employees, and it's just here for the board's approval now.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation from Chris. I hear a motion to accept this safety plan.
Motion made, James.
Motion by Mayor James. To have a second.
Second, Mayor Gentry.
Second by Mayor Gentry. Any questions or comments? Not hearing any. Are there any opposed to this safety management plan? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Thank you, Chris. Next thing is drug and alcohol policy, Chris.
Yes. We have the drug and alcohol policy that we use for all of our transportation employees, all the safety sensitive ones. That also has to be approved by the board. You've seen this before. We occasionally have to make slight changes to it. During our past triennial review and TDOT oversight, we found a couple of areas that needed to be changed. One of them is the drugs that are tested for. Instead of calling them opiates, we're now calling them opioids. We also had to check and make sure that our substance abuse professional, should we refer anyone to a substance abuse professional, that we have to have their qualifications. Both of those changes have been added to the policy, and we'd ask you, the board, to approve it now.
Okay, thank you, Chris. You've heard a recommendation from Chris. Do I hear a motion to approve the drug and alcohol policy?
Make a motion. Evans.
Mayor Evans, have a second?
Second, Mary James.
Thank you, Mayor James. Any questions or comments for Chris? Not hearing any, do I hear any opposed to the drug and alcohol policy presented? Okay, not hearing any, it passes unanimously. Chris, do you have anything else?
Thank you. I do not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, next on the agenda is community service report. Karen Davis.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say that all of the community service programs have continued on during this time, and we're thankful with the technology that was available that allowed us to do that. Just have a couple of updates. Our child and adult care food program, we had to spend the on-site monitoring of the homes and the centers due to the COVID per the DHS until August the 31st. We have saw a decline in the billing for April and May in the daycare homes, of course, due to the COVID. Some homes were actually closed or operated on a lower schedule. We do anticipate, though, we have seen an increase in the last few weeks. So we're hoping by the end of June that all of that will be back to normal. On the other side of that program, the centers, we have increased those to, as of today, 14 centers. So we only had one of those that closed during the month of April. So we didn't see a decline on that side of the program. The court-appointed special advocate program is currently working from home. They're doing all of their meetings by telework and video, teleconference and video. And we would also like to say that we had the Casa Rodeo June the 5th and the 6th and saw a record attendance there. And we're able to increase the opportunity for the social distancing with more seating. So that allowed for the overflow of the people. And Margie did a outstanding job this year on the rodeo as well. In housing, of course, our in-home inspections, they were suspended, but last week Wendell the inspector was laid off, but he's now back to work. And we did put in place safety protocols for him to go by to allow the continuance of the program with the inspections. The HCV side of that, they are not, they have went to biennial inspections now, so they're only every 2 years for the annuals. But we do have, he is going out to do the new homes inspections, and anytime that a landlord or a client calls in that is requesting an inspection. The paid staff, they are continuing to work from home. They send one staff into the office that collects the mail and they distribute that out. In elderly support, our single staff person that had taken the extended FMLA will return to work this week. And we have continued on with that program for every client that would allow us to come into their homes. Our commodity distributions have continued on as scheduled, but we have saw a decrease in the pickup of those, and we're not sure if that's due to the being afraid to be exposed to the COVID, or if there's enough resources out there now that are allowing them to have enough food. But we're going to do some outreach on the commodities to get that back up to the same level. The ERP and the weatherization program, they both have had their in-home services suspended for the COVID, but they started back up last week doing some home inspections, and we're getting those programs back up to going. During the time that the field staff were off, they did do a lot of training that they were able to do online. So that was a plus for the program. On June the 16th, we received a memo from THDA that stated the 2021 emergency repair program contracts will have an increase in the client benefit from $10,000 per job to $15,000 per job. And the admin fee percentage will also increase from 10% to 15%. So we think that increase in the dollar amount on the job will allow us to be able to benefit the client more. As you all know, today everything is increased in amounts, dollar amounts. So we're hoping to have a lot more jobs. In caring, we received notice from the Department of Human Services that the vocational rehab grant that the caring program was funded by will not be extended through September 30th of this year. The current program participants will have completed the program by that date, and no new referrals are being offered at this time. The program currently houses 2 staff, and if the staff want to continue on with the agency, they will be absorbed into the CARES funding with the CSBG program. LIHEAP, THDA has discussed with the subgrantees the release of the COVID and additional carryover funds. The exact dollar amounts are unknown to us at this time. They have also not determined the exact program details, but we have been giving information that the clients that have already been approved for the program this year will not have to do anything to receive the additional benefit. We have seen a slight increase in applications, but we still have plenty of funds to spend in all of our counties. We're going to do outreach, continued outreach in that program as well. Our CSBG staff are working from home for the biggest part. They're continuing with seeing their current clients and taking applications from new clients with phone calls, emails, and any technology that is available. They are attending all their required meetings. Like LIHEAP, the demand for CSBG services has not been as large as we expected, but we will just continue doing the outreach. Our CSBG program requires us to maintain organizational standards, which include our mission statement and strategic plan. Our strategic plan expires in September of this year. During the process of developing the new strategic plan, we're hoping to strengthen our mission statement as well. Staff have submitted their recommendations for changes, additions to the current one, or a completely new statement. We are working with these recommendations in an effort to achieve the strong mission statement for the agency. And as you know, we received yesterday, the approval letter for our COVID CARES CSBG funding. And we had submitted our plan a couple of weeks ago. And as a new requirement, they did ask us to have our plan approved by our board, which is what you see on the screen now. And we do apologize for that, but they wanted the approval back by June the 15th from the board. So our grant for that money, specifically for the COVID, is $643,699.60. We did put the $300,000 in the budget for this for the direct client benefits. And on your screen, you can see how those benefits will affect the client and be available for the client. So we do have to have an approval of this. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the community action plan that Karen has presented?
Motion to approve Cartwright.
Do I have a second?
Second, Mary James.
Thank you, Mayor James. Karen, quick question. You said this had to be back in June 15th. Did you mean July?
Yes, sir, I did mean July the 15th. I am so sorry. I apologize for that.
All right. Any questions or comments for Karen about the action plan? Hearing none.
Quick
do I-
question, Chairman,
Yeah.
do we think all the stimulus packages and the increase in the unemployment benefit is really one of the reasons we haven't seen the increase in the need for some of the programs, even though we've had, double digit unemployment?
I think it has, Mayor Gentry. I think it's played a big part. That and some people are making more money sitting at home on this unemployment than they are when they were working. So
we have actually seen a decrease in the number of people that are coming and getting commodities, and we've had big distributions. So I agree with Mayor Gentry and Mayor Jackson. It can only have something to do with that large amount of unemployment. So we'll see what happens as businesses start opening back up and people don't come back. Maybe we'll see that demand increase then.
When does the extra $600, when is that scheduled to end?
Mayor Gentry, I think that's end of July.
Okay, thank you.
Not sure about that, but that's what I've been told.
Okay.
There is some reports, there may be another 50 stimulus check coming out.
So we could see an uptick in demand for services in August or September, I guess.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions or comments? Okay, is there any opposed to the action plan? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Karen, anything else?
No, sir, that'll be all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, next on the agenda is Nancy, Executive Director's update report.
Thank you. As I have told you previously, the HRAs are currently under sunset. And the comptroller's auditors had come into the office just prior to the order to stay at home. So we have had to respond to a large portion of their inquiries while we were working from home and while they were working from home. So far, it has been, we've had very little difficulty. We have had to go back and get some kinds of information that we didn't just have readily available on a server. So we've had to make hard copies and send, but it's worked pretty well. As they have talked to me, their focus has been very heavily towards the board participation and board composition. And so I've had several conversations with the auditor at the comptroller's office, but the HRA executive directors have also been meeting and discussing how the TCA mandates what our board composition should look like. So we can't do anything with that composition. One thing that they have come up with, and the audit hasn't been distributed yet, but a lot of the HRAs use the city mayors as their provider of local services because they provide water, gas, things like that. One of the auditors has suggested that will no longer be allowable. If that happens, then our board will have to sit down and look at what kind of other person we put on. The TCA says that we should have someone knowledgeable of human services from each local county. So we will visit that when that final audit comes down. The other thing that they have talked about is that because we are a community action agency, the Community Action Act CSBG Act says that we should have a tripartite board. But the Act also gives us an out, and it says unless there's another mechanism identified by the state. Well, the state says that we can have a policy council, and it tells us what the policy council shall be made up of. Our policy council is, the representatives on that policy council are actual recipients of our services. And I have forwarded all of that information to the CAP law, which is a group of lawyers and accountants that help with community action agencies. And they have given me a ruling that has said that we are in compliance with what the CSBG Act says. So we will see whether or not the comptroller's office will accept that as us being in compliance. But they're supposed to be finished with their portion of the audit and us make a presentation, I believe, by November. So that should be coming down fairly quick. As you have heard, most of our staff have continued to work from home. And part of the reason that we did not rush to bring everybody back was not everybody at Sethra has laptops. So we had desktops that actually left the building and they don't need to be moving back and forth. And so until we had a good grip on all the cleaning supplies, all the sanitation, all of that, then I've just had them stay home. And then once we got the telecommuting policy in place, now we can start looking at who does and doesn't come back. One thing that I have to say is that with our staff working from home, it has really taught us that work doesn't come to a halt. Matter of fact, a lot of our staff have reported being much more capable of finishing projects in a timely manner than they were when they were here. So for me, I'm at that age that, surely it can't work. Well, it has proven that it does work. As you recall, we had a direct appropriations that we get from the Department of Human Services. That comes into us right around $146,000 a year. The board did vote for the mechanisms that we were supposed to use to expend that money. All of that money has been spent or obligated, and we are hopeful that we will get that same amount of money next year. The Marion, that direct appropriations for this year, we used it to replace the metal roof at the Marion County office. We purchased 2 vehicles, laptops, and then bonus pay for our drivers and the aides who remain on the job. So once I get the notice from DHS that we will be funded again for the direct appropriations, I'll start working on a budget for that to be presented to the Finance Committee for approval. With all of that, I want to roll into the resolution that Jennifer should be putting up on the screen. In your packet, you received a resolution that on page 2 had no numbers. This resolution is what FTA is requiring us to provide them as we dispose of the STS building. So basically, what we put in there was that the appraisal came back at $985,000, and that the federal share of that is $765,000 with the state share of $45,000. All those numbers do is just give the FTA a starting point. That's nothing, there's no money that is going to be paid by Sethra to anybody. If you recall, we did agree, and I think in June of last year, that we would do a grantee to grantee transfer between us and CARTA, and CARTA would pay us right around $103,000 for funds that we had put into the building. So with this resolution, we will be able to, once CARTA's ready to do their resolution, we will be able to send an entire packet up to the FTA so that we can finalize the transaction of moving the STS building over to ownership to CARTA.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard Nancy's recommendation on the resolution. Do I hear a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved, Ridley.
Motion by Mayor Ridley. Have a second.
Second, Lou Allen.
Second, Mayor Lou Allen. Questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Do I hear any opposed to the resolution? Okay, hearing none opposed, the resolution passes unanimously. All right, Miss Nancy, what else do you have?
Chairman, that's the final part of my presentation.
Thank you, Nancy. Does any of the board members have any questions or comments before we adjourn the meeting? Again, thank you all for taking time out of your schedule to do this meeting. pray that we all stay safe and healthy through this ordeal we're going through. Just, we need to each continue to pray each day that this ends soon and our country gets back to normal and our issues we're having across the country subside very quickly. So again, thank y'all. Have a great week, and we'll see y'all in September. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.